When my wife and I arrived at the Halloween party, it was already lively. It was hard not to notice her fit physique showcased by her tight, jet black Catwoman outfit. Despite being a mom of two, Alicia looks stunning. Sometimes I forget just how attractive she is. I, on the other hand, was dressed as a pirate. Hot? Not really. But not too shabby either. Alicia gave me a quick kiss on the cheek before mingling with other guests, while I made my way to the drinks area where my friends were engaged in a heated debate. As I approached, I realized they were arguing over the age-old question, Hulk or Superman? It struck me as a bit silly considering the intellect in the room. Superman was obviously the superior choice. Nevertheless, I decided to join the debate, drawing from my childhood spent immersed in Marvel and DC comics. Confident in my expertise, I hoped to settle the matter once and for all. However, my arguments only fueled the debate further, turning the conversation into chaos. But that's what happens when you mix beer with grown men. Eventually, we all agreed to table the discussion, opting instead to enjoy the abundance of beer and fun. Knowing Alicia wouldn't want to leave anytime soon, I planned to stay relatively sober. She was already having a great time chatting with her best friend Susie, who was also dressed as Catwoman. Alicia and Susie had been inseparable since middle school, despite being almost polar opposites in personality. They shared the same upbringing, often jokingly speculating about being switched at birth. However, they both detested that joke. Susie was married to Dominic, who was quite different from me in many ways. While I managed restaurants for a living, Dominic worked with his hands. Though I wasn't as active in the gym as I used to be, I still maintained a decent level of fitness from my boxing days in college. Dominic, however, works at a nearby factory. While I'm unsure of his specific role, I know it entails heavy lifting for 8 to 10 hours daily. He's practically a gym rat, resulting in a muscular physique. Unlike my neat short hair, his is long and tied back in a ponytail, complemented by a beard giving him an Aztec warrior vibe. If Dominic resembles Drogo from Game of Thrones, I'm more akin to Don Draper from Mad Men. Though I never truly warmed up to him, I didn't dislike him either. Our connection was merely through Susie, my wife's best friend, so our interactions were sporadic and never extended beyond that. And tonight was no exception. Sporting a Tarzan costume in chilly weather struck me as insensitive. I couldn't help but perceive it as an idiot move, reflecting his tendency for such actions. Despite his flirtatious behavior, which often bordered on inappropriate, the women, including Alicia, seemed to find it more amusing than offensive. This bothered me, especially considering Susie's apparent indifference. While she occasionally playfully chided him, there was no real reprimand, suggesting she took pride in his ability to attract attention. As the night progressed and Dominic's inhibitions lowered with drinks consumption, his flirtatiousness became more pronounced, regardless of the women's marital status. Though some husbands may have been angered by his advances, no one reacted, perhaps out of fear, intoxication, or a desire to avoid confrontation. However, I remained vigilant, ready to intervene if he crossed a line with Alicia. Sensing my unease, she approached me. "Are you enjoying yourself, Greg?" she shouted over the music. I nodded and took a sip of beer, observing her move to the music. Standing beside me, her attention shifted to Tarzan, silently appraising his physique. Unintentionally, I felt a surge of jealousy as I sensed her desire. It bothered me. "Who dresses as Tarzan in this weather?" Alicia snapped back to reality and faced me. "You know Dominic, sweetheart, always craving the spotlight." I chuckled, but the taste of my beer suddenly soured. Alicia noticed my shift in mood. "Are you jealous?" she asked. "Jealous of him? I don't need to strip down to get attention," I replied, my tone defensive. Alicia laughed it off. "Of course not, honey," she said, turning her attention back to him. As the night progressed and more drinks flowed, inhibitions waned. Dominic and his loincloth became less of a focus as I mingled with my genuine friends. It wasn't until later that I noticed Dominic making advances towards Alicia. Searching for her, I found them in the kitchen, engaged in a carnal conversation. My jealousy flared, and Dominic retreated upon seeing me. Alicia, sensing the tension, greeted me with forced warmth. "Hi, darling, I was just looking for you," she hurriedly said. "In the same place all night, Alicia. What were you two talking about?" "You looked awfully cozy," I asked, my tone accusatory. She tried to dismiss it. "Nothing happened, Greg. Dominic was just being his usual flirty self," she assured, but my unease lingered. "I'm just a bit tipsy, honey. Don't worry," she said, patting my cheek before leaving. For the rest of the evening, Dominic and Alicia kept their distance, exchanging only secretive glances. It was enough to unsettle me. I needed a break. The beer was kicking in, so I needed a bathroom break. Afterward, I bumped into Dominic as if he'd trailed me. "Got a problem, Greg?" he slurred, his gaze menacing. "What?" I felt the surrealness of the moment. He accused me of looking down on him due to my wealth, inciting superiority. It puzzled me. "You're drunk, Dominic. Go home before you say something you'll regret," I said, moving past him. "Regret what? Like sleeping with your pretty wife?" he jabbed, grabbing my attention. I confronted him, warning him to keep my wife out of his twisted thoughts. He smirked, dismissing them as memories, not fantasies. His words struck me like thunder, ending the conversation. "You're full of it," I retorted, less certain now. Then he made crude remarks about Alicia, crossing a line. Enraged, I struck him, the impact echoing through the drywall. Descending the stairs, I found Alicia, her tear-filled eyes confirming Dominic's claims. Panic ensued as Dominic lay unconscious. Amid the chaos, Alicia approached me, her question frozen on her lips. A glance told her I knew. Her teary eyes confirmed Dominic's words. "Call emergency! Dominic's unconscious!" she cried. Screams echoed from above, but I stood there, looking at Alicia, searching for the woman I married. Honestly, I didn't care about Dominic's fate at that moment. "What the hell did you do to my husband?" A scream pierced the air behind me, followed by fists punching my back. I dodged Susie's swings and someone pulled her away. "Greg!" "What the hell?" Richard, the party host, questioned, noticing the chaos. Ignoring him, I faced Susie. "Did you know your husband slept with Alicia?" Her silence spoke volumes, confirming her knowledge without anger or denial. She just looked at me as if she knew everything. Alicia's hand rested gently on my shoulder. "Greg, we need to talk, but not here," she said softly. I turned to her, unleashing a surge of rage unlike any I'd felt before. It was so intense, tears welled in my eyes, a release of emotion preventing me from exploding. "He woke up!" a shout echoed from above. Susie hurried back upstairs. My anger began to fade as the gravity of the situation sank in. What if I had eliminated Dominic in a moment of anger? I could face lifelong consequences, even assault charges, jeopardizing my hard-earned career over a drunken mistake. The same drunken mistake who slept with my wife. "Greg, come on, honey. Let's get out of here. We need to talk," Alicia pleaded. "Us? No, Alicia. You're going home with your boyfriend and his wife. I'm leaving," I retorted, heading for the front door. Alicia grabbed me in desperation. "Greg, you can't leave me here. We're going home and we're going to talk. Do you hear me? You're not leaving me behind," she cried, her face streaked with tears, a mix of fury and sadness. It made no sense what she was angry about. "I can't handle this, Alicia. Don't go home. I could end up in jail for assault. I don't want to add domestic violence to the mix." "Damn you, Greg. Damn you. Want to punch me? Go ahead, coward. At least you'll acknowledge me. Damn. It'd be the first time you've touched me in weeks." She jabbed her finger into my chest as her anger escalated, leaving me puzzled by its intensity. She was the one in the wrong, yet she was furious. "Is that it? Because I don't cuddle you every night? Is that your lame excuse? Is that why you cheated with this idiot?" She didn't respond verbally. Her defiant glare spoke volumes. "Just so you know, Alicia, I earn a living. I don't have a husband to pay my bills. Maybe if you had a job, you'd understand what it's like to come home exhausted." Suddenly, I remembered our audience, hanging on every word like they were watching a movie. Alicia was mocking me. "Poor Greg, too tired for his wife, yet finds time for adult movies. Maybe if you paid attention to your wife instead of silicone Barbie dolls online, she wouldn't confide in her friend about feeling neglected." Alicia's voice crescendoed, fists clenched, tears streaming down her face, a mix of pain and fury. It was the ultimate humiliation. I had no witty retort or comeback. Speechless, I faced the judgmental stares of our friends and neighbors, shock, disgust, sympathy, and perhaps a hint of entertainment. I had to leave. Alicia's cries of despair echoed until I started the car and drove off into the night. This story, based on real events, is not from Greg's perspective, but mine, Richard, the party host. Yes, I have a hole the size of Dominic's next to my daughter's room. Writing from Greg's viewpoint allowed readers to feel his anger and humiliation. My wife and I discussed it extensively. It's like watching a train wreck. You can't look away. Susie's lack of anger when Greg disclosed Alicia's affair with Dominic indicated she was already aware. Was it a ménage à trois or another scenario? Frankly, a ménage à trois involving them would rival any adult movie. How long had this been going on? I also noticed the exchanged looks between Alicia and Dominic at the party, suggesting something more. Maybe I'm overanalyzing, but maybe not. It was evident Greg was neglecting Alicia carnally, perhaps in other aspects too. Was this an excuse for her infidelity? I doubt it. Does it explain why she cheated? Certainly. Women whose advances are consistently rebuffed may be more tempted to have an affair, especially if the husband shows interest in other women or watches adult movies, which can be seen as a form of betrayal. By the way, Alicia is incredibly attractive in real life. In my opinion, any man would find her irresistible. But this reinforces the saying that for every beautiful woman, there's a man tired of having lovemaking with her. The crucial question is, what happens next? Currently, the four of them are keeping silent about the situation, but it's only a matter of time before it comes out. While this story is based on true events, I didn't witness everything and had to take creative liberties, especially with Greg's inner thoughts. I sympathize with him and the tough choices he faces. Alicia treated him unfairly, regardless of her reasons. I'm uncertain whether reconciliation or divorce is the best path. Full disclosure, I'm somewhat biased, as Greg is a friend of mine. And about Superman and the Hulk, I side with Greg. Superman's powers like thermal vision, flight, and super speed would easily defeat the Hulk unless there's kryptonite involved. But that's beside the point. Mr. Kirkson, they're calling you on line 1. Who is it, Betty? Mr. Ford is calling for you, sir. Greg called me. I've been trying to reach him since the Halloween party incident. Until now, he, his wife, and their lovers remained silent. But there have been so many questions. How could something like this not happen? The public showdown was so dramatic, with elements of lovemaking, violence, and betrayal. And the epic confrontation between David and Goliath, except this time, Goliath had a glass jaw and wrote a check his drunk self couldn't cash. And David cashed it out of genuine hatred. Patch him through, Betty. Sir, he seems a bit upset. Well, yes, his wife did publicly humiliate him. If he weren't upset, I'd be concerned. Thank you, Betty. I'll handle it. I awaited the click indicating I was connected to Greg. Hey, Greg, it's Richard. I've been trying to reach you since I couldn't bring myself to say these words out loud. Ever since I found out about my wife sleeping with that moron. Yeah, I needed some time to process everything, Greg replied, his voice still carrying the simmering anger beneath his composed tone. Even over the phone, his emotions were palpable. So, do you want to talk about it? I asked, hearing a chuckle from him on the other end, tinged with bitterness. It almost sounded like a snort. Why would I want to talk to you, Richard? Huh, buddy? So you can broadcast it online? Does your little story need a sequel? Are people dying to know what happened next to the guy who couldn't satisfy his wife? Can't your eager fans just wait to see how my damn life unfolds? Fine. He had read my narrative. Now, not only was he furious at his cheating wife, her deceitful friend, and her caveman lover, but he was also angry with me. Fantastic. Greg and I were high school buddies. He played baseball, I played football. Despite losing touch after school, him off to college, me joining the Air Force, we reconnected when I returned to our hometown years later. He'd landed a management job at Olive Garden. I teased him about wasting his college degree, but he persisted and quickly climbed the ranks, eventually becoming a district manager overseeing multiple restaurants, earning almost as much as me. Now, my dear friend was seething at me. Not good, Greg. Usually I'd crack a joke to diffuse tension, but in this case, it'd only make things worse. I especially liked the ending, I began, but he cut me off. I had no choice but to shut up and listen. You know, where I tucked my tail between my legs and ran off like a coward. Nice touch. His words dripped with sarcasm, leaving me feeling like a terrible friend, utterly defenseless. Greg, where are you? We need to talk, I urged. You know what's funny, Richard? I've suddenly become quite the popular guy these days, more so than ever before. Seems like everyone wants a chat with me. Must be my charming personality, he quipped, his voice slurring slightly. I could hear the clinks of liquid pouring into a glass. Greg, are you drunk? I asked, concerned. No, Richard, I was drunk an hour ago. Can't tell you who I am now, he retorted sarcastically. All right, I admit it, I was a lousy friend, but I'm here to make it right. Where are you, Greg? I said, hastily grabbing my coat and keys, momentarily forgetting my work obligations. Screw you, Richard, not telling you where I am. Don't you dare show up at this bar. I'll mess you up if you do, he warned before the line went dead. But I didn't need him to tell me. I knew exactly where he was. There were only a handful of bars in town worth going to, and Greg had his favorite at Moe's, partly because he had a thing for the cute bartender there. She was the type who could flirt and seem unattainable at the same time, which only added to her allure. Yet, despite her charm, she wasn't busy when I walked in. My heart sank seeing Greg alone at the bar, the sole patron in the place. Checking my watch, I realized it was just past noon. Karen, the bartender, greeted me with a wave, her eyes showing concern. "Does this handsome guy belong to you?" she teased, though her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. I nodded subtly, gesturing for her to give us some privacy with a tilt of my head towards Greg. It was all I managed before his fist connected with my face, sending me reeling and seeing stars. No wonder Dominic ended up in bad shape. Before I knew it, I was on the floor, wiping blood from my lip as Greg glared down at me. Eventually, he shook his head and returned to the bar stool. I picked myself up, signaling to Karen to keep quiet as I made my way over to Greg before he noticed me again. She stood before us, eyes wide as saucers. As she started to approach, I silently waved and nodded, signaling that it was all right. In response, she nodded back and resumed clearing tables. "Now that that's settled, can we talk?" I asked, mustering up courage as I sat down beside him. He took another sip of his beer and shook his head. "Off the record?" he quipped sarcastically. I chuckled inwardly. At least his sense of humor was intact. "Anyway, you really hit a nerve there," he said with disdain. "How's your relationship with your mom? You've met her, right?" "Yeah. I still remember her frisking me to make sure I didn't bring any forbidden stuff into her house. We laughed about it later," Greg recounted, taking another sip before meeting my gaze. For God's sake, Richard. It was bad enough going through that, then reading about it and knowing all my friends knew it was me. "Greg, I just penned it down. I never meant to embarrass you. And besides, no one will even know it's you." I tried to reassure both him and myself. 2 cats, Tarzan, and a pirate. Plus the pirate who tossed Tarzan into the wall. How many damn Halloween parties do you think that's happened at? Most of them are the same. Greg looked like he wanted to punch me again. "You find this funny?" Okay, humor was definitely not the way to go. "You're right, Greg. I was an idiot. I genuinely apologize for putting you in that spot." "Well, I'm not sorry for punching you," he retorted. I rubbed my chin and chuckled. "You still punch like a girl. No wonder you always got your backside kicked in boxing." That seemed to break the tension, and it continued to thaw. I managed to coax him away from Moe's and into my car. Karen shot me a grateful look and hugged me as we left. "Take care of him, Richard. He's going through a lot," she said. My jaw was throbbing and beginning to swell, but I got Greg out of there, and that was what mattered most. The moment I secured him into my passenger seat, he drifted off, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Instead of heading to his mom's, I drove him to my place. Along the way, I called another friend, John. "How's it going, Richie Rich?" He greeted me cheerfully as he answered the phone. John was one of those guys who still acted like he was in his 20s. A great guy, though quite immature. I emphasize very, since most guys are at least a little immature. He's the one who sparked the whole Hulk versus Superman debate, always the life of the party. However, none of the wives really want their husbands to be under his influence. He had a knack for bringing out the teenage troublemaker in his friends. But we all love him. "John, I need your hand. I found Greg at Moe's. Might need some help getting him into my place and settled in bed. He's out cold." "Damn. Glad you tracked him down. Been looking for him all week. After what that idiot did to him, it's a miracle he didn't do something drastic." John parked his Mustang behind my Tahoe in my driveway, and together we tackled the task of moving 200 pounds of dead weight onto the couch in my basement. Not an easy feat. After chatting for a bit, he headed out with the promise that I'd keep him updated. Being home early meant I had the house all to myself, which was a rarity. So rare, in fact, that I found myself at a loss for what to do. Didn't want to step out in case Greg woke up disoriented, so I fired up the George Foreman grill for steak and baked some potatoes. Then I flipped through my cable sports package, hoping to catch a good game or at least some interesting sports talk. Settled on a documentary and dug into my meal. It wasn't long before my wife, Nikki, walked in with our kids in tow. "Hey, what brings you home so early?" she asked, planting a kiss on my cheek. The kids scampered upstairs. "Found Greg at Moe's, sloshed as hell. Brought him back here and laid him out in the basement," I explained. She looked hesitant. "Are you sure that's a good idea? I don't want any drunken antics in front of the kids." "He'll be fine, sweetheart. I'll keep an eye on him," I assured her, feeling her hand caress my cheek, sending a shiver down my spine. That's when she noticed the swelling. "Richard, what the hell? Did he do this?" "I'm all right, honey. Don't worry about it." "Rich, get him out of here." "Honey, everything's under control. The poor guy just found out his wife was cheating on him a few weeks back, and it happened so publicly. He's on edge. Plus, he's been dealing with it all alone." I'm his friend. He needed an outlet for his pent-up anger, and if that meant taking some hits, I didn't mind. Besides, my jaw's not as fragile as Tarzan's. Maybe he should consider a different costume next year. Nikki couldn't help but chuckle at that. Watching Tarzan get his backside kicked by a pirate was pretty amusing. I doubt Jane would approve. Yeah, Tarzan definitely got what was coming to him. Dominic should spend less time pumping iron and more time hitting the bag, Nikki quipped. Or at least learn to dodge, she added. We shared a laugh once her giggles subsided. One thing I've always admired about Nikki is her personality and sense of humor. It's one of the reasons why I can't stay angry with her for too long. I headed downstairs to check on Greg. His thunderous snoring assured me he was still very much alive, albeit functionally comatose. I slipped a pillow under his head when he let out a sound that could wake the dead. His drink's breath could have knocked out a bull. What the heck, Greg? I muttered, the stench clinging to me. I needed to step away. A few hours later, a zombie-like version of my friend emerged from the abyss. His bloodshot eyes screamed exhaustion and distress as he shuffled around my kitchen. Nikki shot me a silent warning that spoke volumes. Keep him in line or he's out. I approached him in the kitchen. How you feeling, buddy? Feels like my wife cheated on me, humiliated me in front of the whole neighborhood, then ran me over with a truck. At least your memory's intact. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. His eyes narrowed. My memory's fine. I remember your damn story too. Remember how you socked me in the face for it? I rubbed my tender jaw. That part seems fuzzy. Might need a repeat just to be sure it's done. There was no real venom in his words. Despite his talk of wanting to punch me again, I knew he wouldn't. I've said it before, but I'm really sorry about that story, Greg. I didn't think it would reach as many people as it did, and I certainly didn't think you'd find out about it. I was wrong. People actually read it. I even got a message from this guy I know who heard about the party from someone, and then read your story online. Who's this guy? You don't know him. He's this loudmouth named Harry from Virginia. I chuckled. Harry Inva, huh? Heard of him? Nice guy once you get past his attitude. By the way, he's on my side and thinks you're an idiot too, Greg said, grinning. Yeah, well, I'm sure he felt that way before reading the story I wrote about you, I replied. Greg nodded and chuckled. I gave him a friendly pat on the back, which he didn't seem to mind, confirming we were okay. Richard, why'd you have to paint me as a wimp? Did I really just bolt like that? Wimp? Greg, you took the guy down in one punch. I was half expecting you to bite his ear off. If you boxed like that in college, you'd have been a champ. No one sees you as weak. Screw you. It's a skill I've still got. Idiot. He smirked and shook his head. I really handed him his rear, didn't I? Pride and laughter blended in his voice. Hell yeah. Bet your sweet rear you couldn't pull that off, he teased, nudging me. Nah. Might take me 2 hits, I quipped back, unable to stifle a chuckle. It was good to see Greg. So, what went down after I split? Kept looking over my shoulder, thinking I was headed to the slammer. Well, Greg, after you bailed from the Halloween party, Alicia let out this wail like she was facing a firing squad and crumpled to the floor. She sobbed loudly like a broken Catwoman. Nikki rushed to her aid, helping her up and leading her to the couch. Susie, the other Catwoman, came down the stairs with her disgraced Tarzan, holding his head as she guided him. Alicia caught sight of them and flew into a rage. You idiot! What did you tell Greg? You've ruined my life, you idiot! Tarzan, already battered by the pirate, now dodged Catwoman's claws, while Catwoman #2 tried to intervene. Alicia, stop it! Cut it out! Susie yelled, defending her husband. Tarzan, being saved by a woman from a woman, only stoked his fire. Can this idiot embarrass the Jungle Man any further? You should have said something, right? You idiot. Couldn't take no for an answer. What's wrong with you? The Jungle Man regarded Alicia's fury with detachment. It was clear he hadn't grasped everything yet. The knockout must have sobered him up. He knew he'd caused today's pain. Alicia, I'm sorry. I was drunk, he said. She stopped attacking and collapsed to the floor again. What do I do now, Susie? What do I do now? Back to Richard's kitchen. After that, they had to haul Dominic to the ER. Turns out he had a concussion. He wanted to press charges, but Susie and Alicia talked him out of it. Alicia pleaded with him not to. She knew if you got arrested, there'd be little hope of your return. Greg chuckled and shook his head. In any case, there's little hope left for this, I sighed, nodding sadly. So, Greg, what happened after you split? All we heard was the rubber hitting the road and the roar of your engine. I wanted to chase after you, but my Tahoe was packed with other cars. I feared you might crash. You haven't responded to any of our calls. Yeah, well, I needed to get away and think, you know? I couldn't wrap my head around it. All our friends are looking at me, judging me. I needed space. So you headed to your mom's place. It must have been tough going back there. Yeah, well, life throws you curveballs sometimes. The only way to deal with it is to do something out of the ordinary. Greg, October 31st, party crap. Damn it. Damn it, these damn women. I sped recklessly along side streets leading out of town. Honestly, I had no clue where I was going. Stop signs, speed limits, traffic lights, none of it mattered. I drove like I was the only one on the road that mattered. What's that sound? I glanced at the passenger seat, recognizing Alicia's ringtone. Her lovely face illuminated my Android screen. She smiled at me, a loving smile captured in time. I remember taking this photo. I was so happy. So full of love and adoration. Damn lie. I fought the urge to chuck my phone out the window. Her picture on the screen lied to me. If I answered, the voice on the other end would lie to me. The cheerful melody announcing her call was a lie. Lies. She slept with Dominic. Maybe they even kissed. Passionately. Excitedly. Damn it. I bet the idiot loved it. Another man's wife in his bed? Who did he think he was? I was the one by her side when she was sick. In the delivery room with her twice. Promising to love her in sickness and health. I devoted my life to her. The persistent ringtone tormented me with its falsehoods. He paused for a moment, then continued. I shut it off and pulled out the battery. Silence. No more lies. I drove aimlessly around the city, my mind on autopilot, protecting itself from overload. The images of tonight's events and worse, the scenarios I imagined between my wife and that idiot in the jungle, were overwhelming my mind, overclocking my processor. Reality hit me when I gazed up and found myself parked in front of my parents' garage. I couldn't recall driving here. It seemed my subconscious guided me back to my childhood abode. Cutting the engine, I entered. Every child holds a key to their parents' home, even if they vowed never to return. Well, perhaps not every child, but in my case, it was late. The living room, unchanged for decades, greeted me in darkness. The sofa, coffee table, lamp, all fixtures frozen in time exactly as I remembered them. Strangely, I found solace in this familiarity. That night, in one drunken conversation with a Neanderthal, everything changed in an instant. I've always been skeptical of stories where worlds shift in a blink, except in tragedy. This night turned me into a believer. My entire understanding of life was upended by a single conversation. Returning to my childhood home brought a sense of stability after an earthquake shatters buildings and fractures the ground. In such times, people crave calmness. Stability was what I needed now. For the moment, I was safe at home. "Who's there?" My mom's voice rang out, envisioning her wielding a baseball bat, ready to fend off intruders. "It's me, Ma." "Gregory?" "Yes." Suddenly, the light flicked on, momentarily blinding me. I squinted to shield my eyes. "Why on earth are you skulking around in the dark? Trying to give me a heart attack?" "Glad to see you too, Mom." As my eyes adjusted, I faced an elderly lady, clad in floral pajamas, hair in curlers. "Why are you here at this hour? And what's with the idiotic outfit?" Straight to the point. "That's my mother." In that moment, I realized I was still in most of my pirate costume. My hat, parrot, and eye patch were long gone. Now I just looked, well, like an idiot. "Long story, Ma. Listen, I'll be staying here for a while. The kids will leave tomorrow, but I'll be back. I'll fill you in, but not in front of them." Okay. I didn't ask her to stay with her. I simply informed her of my intentions. This might appear odd to most, but it's normal for us. My family isn't what you'd call affectionate. My dad is straightforward, never saying more than necessary and expecting the same in return. Hugs are brief, "I love you," reserved for dire moments. My parents were a perfect match, both reserved in affection. How they even conceived me remains a puzzling mystery. They were either destined to find each other or destined to suffer alone. "All right, Gregory, you know where everything is. I'm going back to bed." My mom's frail figure vanished around the corner, her voice trailing. "And lock up." The next morning, I checked my phone, finding 29 missed calls. 15 from Alicia, some from Richard, and a few from others at the party. I ignored them, knowing they'd likely consist of people eager for gossip about the affair. After a restless night, pain, anger, and confusion lingered. I also wondered about the police. What happened to Dominic after I left? Did he go to the hospital, press charges? Would I end up in jail? I slipped out of the house before my mom woke, leaving a note explaining my departure. If Alicia called, Mom was instructed to inform her I'd reach out when ready. I parked near my favorite bar, seeking solace in strong drink to numb the pain. For the next couple of weeks, I hid at my mom's, only encountering Alicia when dropping off the kids or fetching belongings. Our interactions were strained, ending with her upset. Before leaving, I overheard her talking on the phone, ears perking up as I listened. If it had been the creep, I would have lost it. But it was Susie, her half of the conversation leaving me unsure if it was better or worse. I divided my free time between my parents' place and the bar. With Dad away on business, it was just Mom and me. Oh, joy. Deep conversations weren't her thing, though she listened attentively and offered support, even if she didn't fully grasp the situation. I'd never discuss adult films with her, especially after her warnings in my younger years about blindness and hairy palms. During my stay, we spoke little. I outlined why I was staying, and she listened, but didn't press for details. When she asked what I'd do next, all I could do was shrug and admit I didn't know. "You'll figure it out," was her encouraging response. We didn't revisit the topic. Oddly comforting, it spared me from endless retelling and emotional coddling. I was free to grieve in my own way, taking all my sick and personal days I couldn't face anyone, even though no coworkers were at the party. Living in a small town, gossip spread like wildfire. I wasn't just dealing with infidelity, it was public humiliation. Poor Greg, too busy with obscene films to satisfy his wife. Eventually, I had to shut off my phone. It kept ringing incessantly, faces pleading for answers. Screw them all! Whether the universe or Dominic's pride intervened, the cops never came. It was intriguing to observe my friends' behavior. They sent emails and even called, yet none visited my parents' house. I realized that when people are unsure what to say, they often avoid the situation altogether. They weren't neglectful friends, just unsure how to help. This silence, both a curse and a blessing, left me alone with my thoughts constantly. To quiet the disturbing images in my mind, I sought solace in drinks at the bar, with Karen becoming both my deity and my salvation. The hardest part about staying with my mother was being separated from my children. It was self-imposed exile, but it still stung. I knew seeing them meant facing Alicia, akin to reaching a warm bed across a half-frozen lake, so I drank even more to numb the pain. It took Karen showing me a story, Caught Cat Women, penned by a friend, to break the cycle. It mirrored my own script, featuring 2 cat women, a pirate, that damn Tarzan, Superman, and Hulk. The nerve. Fuming, I dialed 7 digits. "Good morning, Mr. Kirkson's office. This is Betty. How can I help you today, Richard?" "Today, at Richard's place. So, what's the plan with Alicia? Divorce? Separation? Give her a thrashing?" Greg chuckled sadly and stared at his plate. "Do I have to choose?" he quipped, lacking enthusiasm. I saw the agony etched on his face, replaying Halloween's events in his mind, her words echoing like a broken record. "Greg, I've got to ask. You can tell me to buzz off if it's too personal, but about that adult film? What did she mean?" Greg blushed, shifting uncomfortably. "So what? I watch them occasionally, not every day. Are you implying she doesn't or you don't?" he retorted defensively. "Sure, I watch them, but Alicia said you were viewing them instead of being carnal with her." "That's true. Buzz off, Richard. It's too personal." "All right, buddy, fair enough. But I just want to understand what went wrong. You two seemed so happy. I never suspected a thing." He gazed down at his meal while his fork traced circles on the plate. "She just doesn't get it, Rich." "What's she not getting?" Greg let his fork drop and ran his hands over his face, taking a deep breath. It was a sigh tinged with sadness, perhaps mixed with guilt. "I work 10 to 12 hours every day, sometimes even 5 days a week if I'm lucky. When I get home, I'm exhausted. I'm stressed out. I deal with irate investors, clients, managers, carnal molestation claims, discrimination claims, and everything in between. It all falls on my shoulders. If something goes wrong at the restaurants, like some customer claiming to have spotted a rat and demanding free food, I'm the one who has to handle it." He paused, gathering himself to continue. I listened, waiting for him to spill it all out. "Alicia requires a lot of foreplay. A lot. I have to spend 30 minutes just on foreplay. Then, when she's ready, we can start having physical engaging. She likes to change positions frequently. On top of that, she wants me to talk dirty to her throughout. I love my wife, I really do. And when I have the energy, it's fantastic. I know guys who complain that their wives are frigid, unimaginative, or just want to get it over with. Alicia is none of those." But I don't have the stamina to do this every night, especially after dealing with all the crap I face during the day. He paused, glancing away. Rich, sometimes I just feel better being alone. I hate to admit it. I mean, every man dreams of a woman like Alicia, a passionate woman who genuinely enjoys lovemaking. I know I'm lucky to have her. But I noticed his eyes starting to cloud over. It's tough to reconcile the pain of marriage when you realize the part you played in your own troubles. I do so much for her, for the girls. I work my backside off to give them everything I didn't have as a kid. My dad was very thrifty. He only bought what I needed. I want more for my girls. And then there's my wife, and I enjoy spending time with them. They're my whole world. But sometimes, I just wish I didn't have to do something for someone else. When I come home after dealing with all the crap at work, sometimes I don't always want to be a dad or a husband or a boss. I think I missed a bit of that. How long has it been since you two were carnal? I mean, before the party. He shook his head. I don't know, Rich. I really don't know. I didn't even realize so much time had passed. I nodded, a flicker of understanding dawning on me. Then I saw anger flash in his eyes. But that doesn't give her the right to do what she did. Though, Richard, I didn't humiliate her in front of everyone. I didn't cheat on her. She should have come to me with our issues. Why didn't she come to me? I had to take a risk with my next remark. It was crucial to convey my point to him without seeming like I was taking her side. Maybe for the same reason you never explained to her why you watch adult films. Communication can be tough, especially if you don't realize you need to say something in the first place. How do you communicate your unhappiness to your spouse? Simply put, you say, "I'm unhappy." Touché. Things were escalating too much. Usually at moments like this, I'd crack a joke, so I switched gears. "So, Greg, about my wall." He caught on that I was teasing him and grinned, shaking his head. "Call it even for this one." Idiot. I thought the punch in the face had evened things out. Not quite. I chuckled. Seeing Greg as he was before Halloween was refreshing, even if it was fleeting. Fair enough. That's when I noticed Nikki standing in the doorway with a peculiar expression. Her eyes urged me to see her right away. I left Greg to his meal and approached her. "What's wrong, dear?" She glanced around nervously and drew me closer to whisper. "Somehow Alicia found out Greg's here. She's on her way. Damn, John. Probably called her to vent or something stupid. Unknowingly gave away Greg's location. You need to intercept that woman at the door." Nikki. Nikki raised her hands and shook her head. "Rich, I'm not getting involved in this mess. Greg needs to face this. He's been avoiding her for 2 weeks. I felt frustration rising toward my wife. She cheated on him. Haven't you forgotten that? No, I haven't. I've got a damn hole in the wall as a reminder. I glanced at Greg, who seemed oblivious to the impending showdown. What do you want me to do, Nikki? Her expression softened with resolve when she saw my determination to help my friend. He has to handle this himself, babe. You can be there for him as a friend, help him through it, but he can't run from it. She patted my chest and left. I turned to prepare Greg for what was coming. Greg, I heard your conversation. You can't exactly whisper. She's on her way. He rubbed his chin and winced. Then his expression shifted to determination. Fine, he said, pushing away from the table. Turning to me, he met my gaze. I'm ready to face this, he declared. With that, he rose and walked out of my back door. Greg? A beautiful sunset. Soft hues painted the pale sky, serene and almost calming. Greg, honey? The serenity shattered. I didn't respond to the alarmed voice signaling the arrival of my unfaithful wife. I didn't even turn to look at her. My eyes remained fixed on the sky above. Alicia interpreted my lack of reaction as an invitation, which in some sense she wasn't entirely wrong about. She settled beside me on Richard's back porch, drawing her knees to her chest as if seeking protection. I've been searching everywhere for you, honey, she said, starting off in the worst possible way. I've been in the same place all night, I muttered, deliberately echoing the exact words I'd used when I found her cozying up to Dominic in Richard's kitchen a couple of weeks ago. She seemed a bit puzzled by my response. Greg, we need to talk, she said, and I nodded in agreement. From my side vision, I could sense her anguish. I avoided looking directly at her face, but it seemed like a grim sight. Swollen eyes, flushed cheeks, a somber expression. At least that's how her voice conveyed it. I love you, honey. It's a lie. I cut her off. Greg, stop it. Alicia, just stop it. You can't claim to love me and then embarrass me the way you did, airing our issues in public like that. I would never do that to you. What are you talking about, Greg? You did this to me, she said, her voice rising with anger. You stormed down the stairs like a madman in front of everyone. You asked Susie if she knew I was sleeping with her husband right in front of everyone's eyes. If you wanted to talk privately, you could have pulled me aside and yelled at me in the car. But no, you were the first one to air out my business like that. In a way, she had a point. I didn't see it that way at the time. I was blinded by rage. Okay, Alicia, I'll give you that, but I didn't initiate this. Your damn boyfriend confronted me, telling me all about your indiscretions in front of other people. I handled it the best I could. I was furious, rightfully so. Could I have handled it differently? I paused to rein in my emotions. But I didn't cheat with anyone, I continued. You didn't have someone come up to you and rub my betrayal in your face. I looked her squarely in the eyes. The anger drained from her expression, replaced by remorse and guilt. I know, Greg, she said softly. I simply shook my head. Do you really think so, Alicia? Do you really? Her eyes sparked again. Maybe you didn't physically betray me, Greg, but you weren't present for me. Remember last night when I wanted closeness? And you? I shook my head. It was on my birthday. I treated myself to some beautiful lingerie from Victoria's Secret. It was so hot. I indulged in a fragrant bubble bath, getting excited thinking about the night ahead. I lathered my body with eucalyptus-scented lotion, spent an hour doing my hair and makeup. Do you recall that night? I did remember that night. That was the day I had to fire Frank. He was my close friend, one of my assistant managers back when I worked at Olive Garden. We'd become good friends over the years. When the allegations surfaced, I stood up for him vehemently. I was certain he wouldn't do something so reckless. But the girl had text messages. Damn text messages. When they emerged, I was livid. I was the one who promoted him. I was the one who vouched for him. And I was the one who had to deal with it. Or they'd deal with me. So, needless to say, I wasn't in the best mood that evening. But I didn't forget her birthday. I made a reservation at her favorite restaurant, all set for a nice dinner. But all Alicia wanted that night was dessert. We went out to dinner for your birthday, and then we made love that night. Alicia, I recalled this. She shook her head sadly. We had love-making, Greg. You couldn't even enjoy it. Then when I tried to cuddle with you, you pushed me away, saying you were tired. That's why I gave you space. Her voice caught, and she swallowed hard. I knew she wasn't finished yet, so I waited for her to continue. Then I woke up in the middle of the night. I saw you at your computer. I saw you watching adult films and pleasuring yourself. The words came out forcefully, and then she broke down. Her body trembled as she tried to cry silently, but to no avail. I sat beside her, speechless. Slowly, I began to grasp her perspective. Hearing her side of things opened my eyes. Until tonight, she was just a deceitful cheater. Now, I wasn't so sure who she really was. I get it, Alicia, all right? I took you for granted. But do you truly grasp this, Greg? Do you comprehend how deeply this devastated me? Can you fathom the pain of realizing that, at your best, you're not enough to satisfy your husband? I doubt you do. After that, I made a pact with myself to stop initiating lovemaking with you. I wanted you to desire me, but you never did. So, that's why you ended up with Dominic. Did he make you feel like a woman? She sniffled beside me and wiped her nose on her sleeve. Yes, Greg, he and Susie did. Damn it. Susie and I got drunk once in high school. Something happened that night. In the morning, we were mortified. We chalked it up to the drinks and pretended it never occurred. Well, over a decade later, I found myself at her doorstep in tears. A few weeks afterward, feeling like the most inadequate woman alive, I went to her place. I was so low, so shattered. I told her I needed to get drunk, and we did. The feeling of inadequacy started to fade, but it never truly went away. And how did you end up in bed with her and Glass Joe? Dominic came home from work and found us completely wasted. Susie confided in him about my issues. He began telling me how beautiful I was, how he desired me. Susie backed him up, mentioning our past in high school. He got excited and suggested we kiss. We were so drunk that we obliged. It all began with a playful kiss, but before I knew it, things had escalated beyond control. How many times did you sleep with them? She turned to gaze at the now darkened sky above us and whispered, Twice. It stung. The drunken episode was bad enough. I could eventually move past it, but knowing she'd been with them again was a whole other blow. So, at the party in the kitchen, what were you and Dominic discussing? Her eyes flashed with anger and a hint of guilt as she recalled it. He was drunk, complimenting my hot costume and suggesting we go to their place for some fun. I was worried someone might overhear, so I tried to hush him. I admitted my mistake, saying the three of us couldn't continue. Then he got a bit forceful, pressing against me. That's when you walked over? Yes. I gathered my lingerie in a pile. Wasn't that what you said? She nibbled her lip, shaking her head. I was furious, Greg. Seeing Dominic pestering me like that just reminded me how little you valued me. Were you planning on heading to his place later for some fun since he appreciated you? She shook her head, locking eyes with me. No. I was hoping you'd finally take the initiative. I chose the Catwoman outfit because I knew you loved Michelle Pfeiffer in Batman Returns. You once told me how you fell for her because of that suit. I saw the way you looked at me in it. I saw desire in your eyes. Mine. I almost skipped the party altogether to get what I'd been yearning for. I wish I had. I hoped when we got home you'd take me. And then Dominic happened. She spat his name out. Well, none of this would have happened if you hadn't slept with him. Why didn't you just talk to me, Alicia? She sadly shook her head again, sniffing. I don't know, Greg. I wish I did. Lord knows why I didn't. Well, I guess there's enough blame to go around. She turned to me, hopeful. So what now? Greg, I don't want to lose you. I love you so much. I'd do anything for us to get through this. My head swirled. Can we get through this? Can I forgive her, knowing I played a part in our downfall? Leave the past behind? I don't know, Alicia. So much has happened. It'll take a lot for us to start healing from this. A glimmer of hope sparked within her. She wiped her tears, gripping my hand. Please, honey, I'll do anything. Just give me a chance to show you how much I love you. I met her gaze, sensing hope. I began to feel it too. It'd take time, but maybe we could mend each other. If we both fought hard enough, there might be a chance. All right, Alicia, but it'll take several steps. First, we need counseling. It's necessary. Obviously, we have a lot to work through. We need to learn how to communicate with each other. She kissed my cheek, embracing my neck. Yes, darling, whatever you say. Secondly, you need to cut ties with Susie. That's when I saw the light fade from her eyes, feeling it dim in my heart. Well, what did you say? I said you need to end your friendship with Susie. Greg, why are you asking me to do this? I reclined in my chair, staring at her in disbelief. Seriously, Alicia? You cheated on me with her and her husband. What do you expect me to do? Just trust that it won't happen again? Every time you're with her or talk to her, do you realize what goes through my mind? How can I heal if this wound keeps getting salt rubbed in it? She recoiled as if I'd struck her, tears welling up in her eyes. We locked eyes in silence as seconds stretched into eternity. You want me to choose between my best friend and my husband? I can't do it, Greg. Please don't make me. Words couldn't convey the agony that coursed through me at that moment. Strangely, it was worse than catching her in the act. This time, there was no anger to mask it. My heart constricted painfully, crushed by the weight of the realization that it was too much to bear. The fact that she couldn't choose me over her best friend was devastating, a catastrophe of unfathomable proportions. The woman I loved most didn't love me the same way. I wasn't her one and only love. I shared her heart with another. Dominic's irrelevant now. I don't care about him. This is bigger, Alicia. But she couldn't sever her ties with Susie. The bond was too strong, rivaling her love for me. She couldn't let it go, even if it meant sacrificing our marriage. Sadly, we divorced less than a year later. Alicia fought tooth and nail to prevent it, even stooping to humiliating herself. I never imagined I'd see her pride crumble like that. She begged me at my workplace not to leave her, embarrassing herself in front of everyone. I begged too. It was a heart-wrenching plea that left everyone uncomfortable. Even I secretly hoped I'd give her another chance. But I couldn't bear the thought of her being around him as long as she refused to relinquish her friendship. In essence, I was right. No spouse should have to share. A year later, the wounds still run deep. There are no winners here. We do our best for the kids, avoiding putting each other down in their presence. Yet, many nights I've been a shoulder for Greg to cry on. But there was one silver lining this Halloween. He brought a date to my party. She wasn't dressed as Catwoman. Maybe she's just a rebound, not his next great love. But finding someone new is still progress. Real life isn't about neatly packaged endings. It's a messy, gradual healing process. Alicia, Dominic, and Susie didn't show up at the party. They cut off contact with the rest of us. Susie remained staunchly by Alicia's side, accusing Greg of unfairness and trying to force an impossible choice. In my view, the choice wasn't impossible. Alicia simply didn't want to be married as much as a loving wife should. She claimed she'd do anything, but actions speak louder than words. She might have been willing to play the part of a love-making slave or a doting housewife. But when it came to sacrificing something personally significant, our marriage wasn't worth it to her. In the end, he's better off without her.